Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Woolley, Managing Director of Cloud9 Spain. We're a real estate company based down here on the Costa del Sol. And with me, as always, on La Pierre de la podcast, I have Mark Stucklin from the Spanish Property Insight. And Mark is the go-to guy for anything to do with Spanish property data and analysis. Hello, Mark. It's nice to have you. Nice to have you along. It's been a little bit of a hot one, as most of Southern Europe has been baking in the heat wave. Everyone's probably seen it on the news. I guess has that affected you being in the north of Spain, or not so much?
So far, it's been a really pleasant summer. I know I've seen the news that they're in other, and you were telling me, just now that it's actually quite unpleasantly hot down there. But up here, it's absolutely perfect. There's the odd day if there's no sea breeze, because we are right on the coast, and there's a hill. There's a few hills around here, and if there's a pleasant breeze, which it has been the last 2 days, it's not at all stifling. No aircon, perfectly pleasant. So we're doing okay.
You're doing very well because I've got at night my partner doesn't like the aircon, so I've got two fans, not even one. I've got two fans directed at me because I mean it's been a little bit stifling. Temperatures have risen to the highest I've seen here for 20 odd years. Mid 40s, which is like, oh Jesus.
Yeah.
At night it's been about 30 degrees, so it's been a little bit uncomfortable. We had a little bit of respite a few days ago. Everyone thought, oh, a normal summer. But yeah, it's just heating back up again. I've just been out actually at a couple of meetings, and it's grey skies and quite humid, which is not typical of this coastline. Normally if it's hot, we get quite a dry heat, which I can tolerate. It's when it gets humid and you just step outside, you start dripping. It's a bit uncomfortable.
Mm.
But
Yes, I can
anyway,
imagine.
moving on from weather, we had the little matter of a general election a couple of weeks ago, which we kind of previewed in our last episode, and it hasn't really taken us any further forward, has it?
No, so we had this general election and it was completely inconclusive. No clear winner. The expectations that the centre-right party, the PP, might get an absolute majority turned out to be somewhat, uh, unrealistic. And even with the coalition with the further right party called Vox, there's no chance of no chance of them, between the two of them, forming a coalition government with an absolute majority. So the next government has to whatever government comes out of these general elections will have to make a parliamentary majority for inauguration, for getting the government off the ground. And that's impossible basically with the PP and Vox, because everyone else, they've really isolated the nationalists, both centre right or centre left. I mean, regardless of which way they lean ideologically, these two parties have completely isolated the Catalan and Basque nationalist parties, and it's impossible to form a government now in Spain. It's now becoming clear that it's impossible to form a government without them. So I guess what we'll have is two possibilities. One is the current coalition will stitch together another parliamentary majority, but it'll be even more unstable than it was last time, or there'll be fresh elections.
And okay, yeah, I've been reading about it as well. I think you're probably more clued up on it than I am. But do you think we're heading for another election end of the year?
I mean, the irony, the gods, they are mischievous indeed. They've given the key to the Spanish government to this character called Carlos Puigdemont, who's a Catalan nationalist. He's quite fanatical, and he's hiding. He's a fugitive of Spanish justice in Waterloo for his part in staging, or his a key role in this illegal referendum and unilateral declaration of independence. This is back in 2017, I think.
Yeah. You probably hang out with more Spanish people than I do. Generally speaking, are the Spanish just fed up with this now, or do they want some resolution, whatever it is, or do you still have these two factions just going at it?
It's definitely more realistic, and it's cooled down, and it's because it was very emotional,
Yeah.
and the scenes that we saw back then were quite, just unsettling.
Yeah.
And they certainly unsettled. I mean, because I've been doing some research recently looking at the comparative fortunes and housing market between Barcelona and Madrid, and the Barcelona's recovery after the financial crisis and the big crash of 2010 onwards, and Barcelona really came out of it much quicker than Madrid. And prices. That's how you saw transactions and prices rising much faster in Barcelona than Madrid. And then Madrid starts catching up, but then hits this Catalan independence crisis and conflict, and Barcelona, it's been in particular, but the whole of Catalonia just goes, starts trending down. Really, there's no collapse, but there's a big decline in sales, and prices follow down. And really, in Barcelona, since peaking in 2000, I think the second quarter of 2017, or was it 2016? My memory's right. It was since that referendum and all the conflict, everything's just been, it went down, and it's sort of it was depressed. It was a sort of depressed or lackluster market with either falling or prices or stagnant or falling transactions and prices, whilst everywhere else was doing fine until early 2019, and then along came COVID and pushed everyone down. And since in the wake of the pandemic, things have been recovering, and people have kind of forgotten about the whole independence. But it really did have an impact, and was a negative impact on the economy, on just rubbing along, everyone getting along. So now it's going to be, there's no possibility of a centre right. There'll only be the only possibility that I can see. I mean, it looks absolutely blindingly obvious that the only possibility is a coalition led by the socialists in coalition with the very hard left and some really unsavory groups in the regions, like the Bildu party, Bildu, which are kind of post ETA kind of hard left nationalist group, that kind of thing. Doesn't look good.
No, it doesn't. I mean, so this kind of hiatus that we've got at the moment, where obviously no one party can take over all control, what does that mean for property buyers and sellers here? Anything or nothing?
Nothing's good. I mean, what'll happen is whether there's fresh elections, which won't really change anything, I doubt. Although the politicians and parties will be very thinking that if we go another round of another election, how will we benefit or lose out in that process? So that's all they'll be thinking about at this stage. I guess that one way or another, we're going to have the same government in power. And that's led by the socialists, and they are the kind of adults in the room, although they passed some very damaging laws, especially on the housing front, with the housing law, which I think we might have mentioned it last time. In Barcelona, for example, there's no more rental. The rental market is completely, the long-term rental market is completely seized up. And that's terrible. That's just a disaster. Yeah. But for most people in most areas, it actually has zero impact. Apart from the sort of, Spain needs to be well governed to be a prosperous country, because that benefits everyone who, if you invest in the country, you want to invest in a prospering country with a good future. We're part of the European Union. There's limits on how crazy governments can be within the European Union. And I think it really makes absolutely very little for the housing market of the kind of people that might be listening to us, that kind of buyers and sellers in the segments that might be listening to us. I think it makes kind of almost no difference at all.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in each of the sort of major countries, like the UK, the US, France, even Germany, Spain, Italy, there's been transitions either in the recent past or on the horizon politically. But like you said, nothing really changes. People will still make a decision whether they want to be there or not, or buy property there or not, no matter whether the government is on the right or the center, or the left of the center, or even far right or far left. Life goes on, doesn't it? And it goes and we just get on with it.
It turns out as you get older, you realize that your life isn't actually that long, and you've got to make decisions before too long. And so people just have to, I can't wait around for this. I think it does make a difference at the margin, like things like political instability. People say, I'll just wait and see it. I'll wait and see 6 months, or I'll wait 2 or 3 months, just see how this settles down. And that can slow down things. That can definitely take the wind out of the market's sail. And when things are looking hunky-dory and everyone's piling in, but sometimes it's not a bad thing to have people being cautious and taking things slowly and doing their research. It's even so in your area, and I know in the areas like the Balearics, Barcelona, the Costa Brava, there's basically a shortage of there's more demand than supply.
Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us on to our next topic, which is the summer, and August in particular, because having worked in real estate for 21 years, 22 years, There's a
No,
common.
it shows on your face, the lines in your etched in your
Oh,
face.
Mark, that's so unkind. I don't need this abuse every month. But there's always talk of, oh, why don't you take August off because nothing ever happens? And I know you wanted to bring it up, didn't you, about this?
Yeah, I'm very curious.
I think it's certainly a Southern European tradition that August you kind of close your office, you lock up, and you leave the city where you're working, whether it's Madrid or Barcelona or Seville or somewhere like that, and you head for the beach, and you have August on the beach with your family and your loved ones, and then you go back at the end of August and you open up again. And I think that's still true to this day, because I've just tried to make a notary appointment for next week in Marbella. No chance. It's just not happening, and I know that there's like one on-call notary who's handling the work of 3 or 4. So things do grind to a halt in terms of the judiciary, in terms of bureaucracy. It's hard to get anything done in August. But of course, the sort of dichotomy of that is that there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of people here who wouldn't necessarily be here any other time of the year. We've got flights coming in. If you look at Flight Tracker and Flight Radar, I'm sure it's the same going into like Barcelona and Palma de Mallorca. The queues of planes, Leo, about to land at Malaga. So there's hundreds of thousands of people here, most of them enjoying a holiday, but there's also a lot of people who are combining that with looking at properties, but they can't get a huge amount done because lawyers are on holiday, notaries are on holiday, public buildings are shut. So a bit like you, we still have to keep going. We still have to show people around. And August, it's a weird one. People say, oh, the quality of clients in August isn't very good. They're only
That's what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, they just want a day off the beach because they're too hot and bothered and they've got sunburnt. And I think we have to give them a little bit more credit. I'm sure that does happen. I'm sure, if people are distracted but maybe it's a cloudy day and they want to go and have a look at some properties, I'm sure that happens all over the world. But here, I think, people kind of know what they want. It's a much more researched market. So the people who are asking for appointments and viewings, I think we have to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are serious. What I would say is that in August, July and August, we get a huge amount of people inquiring, mainly because they're here and they see things and they want to inquire about them, but also people who want to look at properties. So we have to service that. And some of those people can be what we used to call time wasters. But amongst all of those people, there are some real golden nuggets. And you have to remember, a lot of the Middle Eastern clients come in August to escape the heat of their home countries. And they're traditionally a very strong buyer group here. You've also got a lot of people from far afield. So, for instance, the States and Canada, whose only real time to come here is the summer holidays, when because it's a long way and people need to plan and people need to spend a bit more time here than just the odd weekend. So you get clients from further afield who tend to be good quality clients because they're putting some time aside to look at property. So yeah, you have to be quite experienced from a purely sort of agent making money perspective. You have to sift through the debris and all the sort of the wheat and the chaff, and and you have to kind of get to those really good clients, because you can waste an awful lot of time backing the wrong horse. What I have your wits about.
So I guess it's like in August, it's the qualifying challenge is most acute because there's so many people there who are just on holiday, and it's like, oh, they get a chance to be like on place in the sun. They go and look around properties whilst on holiday, but they might not be very serious. They might be kind of it's a fantasy more than a reality. And so, whereas I guess in February, the people that are there to see houses are really there to see houses.
Absolutely. And the other complication is there's not a lot of stock available, certainly resale stock to show people in July and August, because a lot of it is rented out or being used by the owners themselves. So people come here and they expect to see lots and lots of resale properties, and often we're struggling to get into them. And we have to say, sorry, that's rented out, sorry, that's rented out, sorry, the owners are here, blah, blah, blah. Personally, if it was me coming to look at properties, I wouldn't come in July and August, because I think it's too hot. We have a lot of clients come to, they want to spend like 3 days with us, and we're like, no, it's not going to happen, because it's just too, at the moment particularly, it's just too hot and sweaty, and it's bad enough for them. It's bad for our staff, because they're having to go around looking fairly smart, bless them, and okay, they're driving in air-conditioned comfort, but it's It's hard. It's really hard work. So we tend to limit our tours to half a day each. But yeah, so we do get clients sort of demanding to see things, and we have to temper their ambition, and we also have to be honest about access to stock and say, look, why don't we have a look at a few things, but come back in September when there's more things to see and we can take a closer look.
How do August compare to other months in terms of sales contracts?
It's a complete mixture, honestly, and that's why it's so difficult to plan the business, because one year you might have a crazy August. I mean, we've did our biggest ever deal in August, and that was a guy who inquired on a Friday night for a development starting at €1 million, and my lead handler worked with him. It was a guy from Saudi, worked with him over the weekend preparing things to send to him, and anyway, it turned out he had a budget of much more than that. And he ended up actually, he was here, he was staying in Marbella Club, and he went out on the Monday and saw 2 villas that he'd been sent by my colleague over the weekend, and he ended up buying one. And so that's what can happen. You just never know. And I always say to my staff, when we get an inquiry through, I still get excited. A new inquiry, and it could be a complete waste of our time, or it could be, an amazing client that we forge a long-term relationship with that buys a multi-million euro property. You just never know, and you have to give every inquiry the same care and consideration and time, and then just work it out as you go along. But July and August, if I had a choice, I'll be honest with you, if I had a choice, I would close the office up. I would go to the UK for 6 weeks, because I don't really enjoy the summer here. I find it a bit too hot, too many people. So when September comes, I'm like, I feel like I know it's really stupid and selfish, but I feel like I've got my coastline back. But we have to keep on working. Now, having said all that, of course, we still get, as I said, the notaries are off, lawyers are off, and we still get agents who say, we're not working in August. So you try and book a property viewing with them, and they're like, no, we're on holiday, we're on the beach. And they don't have anyone to cover. So that's it. That's a lost opportunity if there ever was one. And then you think, who's got it right? Who's got it wrong? We're here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is what the Spanish tend to do, isn't it? The Spanish, the summer and the beach is sacrosanct, and if they've got busy lives and jobs in the cities, then they don't even think twice about, as I said at the start, they don't think twice about just shutting up shop, heading for the beach, and it can wait. But I guess the problem we have is we're dealing with a multinational audience, and we have to service those clients. If we don't, somebody else will. And everybody's trying to earn a living, make money. So someone has to do it, and that's
that makes sense. That, as you said, there are some people for whom some types of clients, especially if you're in the international sector, that come over only in August, and therefore it's critical for them and for those types of market segments for you to be operating in August. For there's long haul Americans, Canadians, really the summer, and July, August is the only time they can come, and people from the Middle East escaping the heat and being over, like a good time for them. But I'm guessing, but then there's this also, there's more people from closer to home who might be just time wasters or just curious or tire kickers, not really serious, and therefore August can be it's more of a challenging month by the sounds of things than other months of the year.
Definitely, because you have that bigger volume, which is stressful in itself, and particularly in the heat. So you have to, experienced real estate agents will quickly understand who the genuine buyers are and who the ones are that can wait. I often say to people, look, just give people time, sit down, have a coffee with them, work out where they're heading. I mean, we've got a situation tomorrow where we've got a client seeing one of my colleagues. It's a referral client, but the budget is very, very low, and we could be wasting 3 or 4 days on someone who can just about afford that budget. And in the meantime, my colleague isn't going to get access to any other clients because they're going to be out with that one, and they may miss out on a 10 million euro La Zagaleta client. And I've said that to her. I said, if you're spending 3 days with that one, you ain't going to be getting access to any others. So, we have to weigh up how we spend our time and how efficient, how productive we are, which is all important. We can run around the coast up and down all day, every day with the wrong people. But you have to ask a client, are you in a position to buy? And if they're not, it has to be, okay, well, what do you want to achieve this trip? And if they say, well, we'd like to see 50 properties so we can do our research, you have to take a view and say, well, actually, we haven't got the time or the resources to be showing you 50 properties with no end result. Having said all that, we've got a great client out with us, out with me. I'm working, my goodness, out tomorrow who looked at it yesterday, and they want to see it tomorrow night because they want to see the sun go down and the lights and the twinkling and stuff. So that's me tied up on a Friday night, but really good client, really nice people. The vendors are really good clients. So, obviously we'll do that. And this is where people think, it's a 9 to 5. This job is nowhere near 9 to 5. We have some of our most important viewings at weekends in the evenings. Sometimes we'll have like pizza, not parties, but pizza parties, and lay on some wine just so people can have a nice experience when they're coming to view a villa in the evening. And also, a lot of high net worth people, they don't have time in the week to talk to you. They're too busy earning the millions. So the time to grab them is maybe on a Saturday morning or a Friday night or a Sunday night or something like that. So our consultants are not 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That just doesn't happen.
Talking of which, we're getting better at keeping to our half an hour. I've got to go off and fix my wife a drink and myself. So I think, let's leave it at that. In our next session, let's talk about branded residences and this whole new phenomenon of how that's working out, because it's really happening more than anywhere in Spain down on your patch.
Absolutely. Everything is branded. I think I'll get myself branded at some stage as well, because honestly, you can't move without seeing a logo of a famous designer at the moment. But we'll talk about that and whether that adds the value that people say it does.
Okay, Sean, as always, a massive pleasure to talk to you.
And you go and fix that gin and tonic.
Okay.
Well, I'm a little bit worried. It's a little bit early in the day, but I'll let you off as it's August.
It's past the 1 o'clock watershed. I'd like to say it's 19 minutes past the 1 o'clock watershed. So I think that's extremely.
And it's 6 p.m. somewhere in the world, so don't worry.
Okay.
Take it easy.
Have a nice day.
Cheers for
Bye.
now. Bye bye.